Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, need to talk about Eric Gray, who has committed to transfer to the University of Oklahoma, and that does a number of things, but not the least of which is fill a vacancy that became a gaping size hole, pun intended, when Ramondre Stevenson decided to enter the NFL draft early rather than, taking another year. Not really early because he was a senior. You get what I'm saying? He graduated. What would he come back for, especially if he thinks he can go make a little bit of money at the next level? Congratulations to Ramondre Stevenson. That said, Oklahoma had missed not once, but twice in 2020 and 2021 on their top running back recruit. Jace McClellan, late in the process, decided he was going to go to Alabama, left Oklahoma with just one tailback in Seth McGowan, where they expected to have two. This year, there was one vacancy open for a tailback. They had put all their chips into the Kamara Wheaton pot, and so far, it has remained an Alabama pot, which means that Oklahoma will have lost two tailbacks to Alabama in successive years in recruiting. However, Oklahoma does get Kennedy Brooks back, who decided to opt out of the 2020 season and will come back and help replenish that room that has seen TJ Pledger also enter the transfer portal. He is out at Utah. So Oklahoma is down two tailbacks, right? We're expected to be down maybe one, counting Ramondre Stevenson. Now, Marcus Major, Seth McGowan are there, and you hope now that Eric Gray will help you fill what is going to be a tremendous opportunity for the Sooners to, get back into this thing in a meaningful way in 2022, assuming Gray is not eligible for 21. We'll see. That said, as a sophomore, averaged over 5 yards per carry, or right at 5 yards per carry, has averaged over 5 yards per carry for his entire career. He was part of a tandem backfield that featured Ty Chandler and him behind what was one of the better offensive lines, I thought, in the SEC, and particularly ahead of last year when we all thought that Oklahoma was going to play Tennessee. We've had this sort of ongoing Twitter spat, internet spat between Sooners fans and Vols fans that has now culminated in not just I'm loving it and Happy Meal toys, but in volunteers volunteering to enter the transfer portal and come out at Oklahoma. Eric Gray is number 3 behind Mr. End of the road, Mr. I'm down on bended knee. Some of y'all get that Wanye Moore, some of y'all don't. And if you don't, this ain't the channel for you. And then, of course, Keyshawn Lawrence, key to his buddies, key to his family, but Keyshawn to his mama, I'm sure, because there is no Y in this man's name. Stop putting a Y in this man's name. He's going to play a little safety for Oklahoma. Wanye Morris, of course, former 5-star offensive tackle. And yes, Eric Gray, former 4-star running back. And with Ty Chandler ending up in North Carolina, where I expect him to get a ton of carries, he's eligible to play, you had to think that maybe Eric Gray was going to wait and stick it out. But he soon, the day that Josh Heupel decides, to take the job, the day that they announce Josh Heupel as the new head coach of Tennessee is the day that Eric Gray chunks up the deuce, which is not necessarily the kind of messaging that you want to see from the Volunteers and the Volunteer fan base who's already apathetic about Josh Heupel being their head coach. I still maintain that Josh Heupel is an outstanding offensive head coach, and particularly running this Baylor style of offense where you basically have the wide receivers spread out very wide in their splits and you're going to go warp speed all the time. Maybe Jeff Levy gets a look for that UCF job. Maybe Tom Herman gets a look for that UCF job. Be interesting to see where that goes. But I know that Eric Gray joining Oklahoma makes Oklahoma even more stable, right, with horses in the stable to run. You get where I'm going with that. But also gives them an opportunity to pick up with that explosive power run game that they value so much and what you saw so much out of Ramondre Stevenson. I maintain that the biggest stride Ramondre Stevenson took once he came back from suspension was not actually going and catching the ball out of the backfield as he showed he could do and then turn those into large games. It was that he didn't put the ball on the floor. That man had a hard time putting the ball on the floor in 2019. People forget you can't put the ball on the floor at Oklahoma. They were talking about, hey man, wishbones quarterbacks and wishbone dudes used to fumble the ball. It wasn't good then. You don't put the ball on the floor at Oklahoma. This is a running team, right? Only in the last really 25 years has Oklahoma become something of a tossing the ball team. Now, I also want to throw in here, when you think, look at Eric Gray, 2 seasons, 0 fumbles lost. That is the kind of record that I want to see from an Oklahoma running back, and that is one of the things I think you should be very excited about with my mans coming out of Memphis, Tennessee. Other aspect of this is obviously big picture, Oklahoma going into Knoxville, coming out with jewels, and not, it ain't just like regular players. These are all blue chips. These 2 4-stars, 1 5-star, right? Among the many that have spread out and posted tentacles all over. Like, I saw jokes on the Twitters about how OU should send Tennessee a voluntary complimentary ring if they go and win a Big 12 championship or a national championship, to which I'm going, is that something like a Happy Meal toy? Because if Dan Patrick is out here putting y'all's laundry in the street, the Happy Meal toy McDowell's ought to be, the joke that's made there, right? Anyway, it's just jokes. But this offense is not going to be a joke. 772 yards rushing for Eric Gray in a pandemic, just 10 games, 157 touches. That's nearly a third more than he got as a freshman. 101 that year, 539 yards on the ground, 5.3 yards rushing, 8 total touchdowns over the last 2 years. But here's another stat for you. The man has averaged better than 8.5 yards per catch, right? 254 yards receiving on 30 catches this season. And then last season, 13 catches for 115 yards. So when he was catching it, he was showing people what to do with it. Also got 3 total touchdowns over the last these 2 years. So you can see how he can factor into what Oklahoma likes to do, not just running the ball, but also with receivers out of the backfield. I haven't seen a dynamic receiver out of the backfield since perhaps Rodney Anderson, and then before him, a Joe Mixon. It'd be cool to see that sort of game get back into what Oklahoma does. I mean, the first person to make that thing actually something OU does, and because known for the all-purpose back, got to be DeMarco Murray back in the day, who is the running backs coach at Oklahoma presently. This is a big win for him, especially after being, shut out of the Kamara Wheaton sweepstakes. All right, let me know what you think about Oklahoma being able to pick up Eric Gray in the transfer portal below. Talk to y'all later. Doses.